Nikki Haskell, it is such an honor to have you here on Misunderstood. I feel like I need to add you to that intro of people that I've had on my show.
What a lot of famous people you had. Congratulations. Who was your
Oh, who is my favorite? Oh my God. Well, I will tell you, I book every single guest that I have on here, and I have a specific, method to my madness. It's like a variety show, which I know you are very familiar with. But so I love every guest. I find them so interesting. But for me, um, Rudy Giuliani was a huge one for me. Before I started my program, I knew that that is somebody who fell into the category of my show, which is people that have been reduced to a headline. And I felt
He's a
like I
great
wanted
mayor. He's
people
the
to
best mayor.
understand their mission a little different, right? Their narrative. So for me, my fiance had died in September 11th, and Rudy
Oh, wow.
and I had never met, but shared that day of New York, right? And I bought a dog 2 days after September 11th, and I named the dog Rudy Giuliani. And that dog stayed with me as the man in my life for almost 20 years. And so to me, it was such an
Wow.
honor to meet Rudy and show Rudy, my dog Rudy's picture. And just I had him only speak on 9/11. I didn't have him talk about the politics and all the stuff. And he was so eloquent, so captivating, and it was one of our best episodes we've ever had. So to me, that was my favorite
Good. I like to hear that because I think he was the best mayor we ever had in New York.
for sure. Absolutely, for sure. Now I'm going to get into your show in a little bit, but now that you're asking me this question, was there one person in particular or one episode on the Nikki Haskell show that stands out to you as your favorite?
Well, I was very fortunate because I got to go to the Philippines with the Marcoses, and that was really an amazing experience. But listen, I'm the first one that ever interviewed Donald and Ivana. And that was great. Donald was a huge supporter of the Nikki Haskell show when I first started.
Hmm.
And I was the first person that ever interviewed him. And I interviewed Andy Warhol, which has been in a million different documentaries. And
Right.
just to get an interview with Andy Warhol is because he was very well, we were, because I'm in all the diaries and all of his party books and things, and he was great fun. I actually liked just about everybody I ever interviewed. I had a lot
So
of really good.
when you interviewed Donald, did you ever have any idea that he would become president of the United States?
I met Donald in like 1972, 73. And I was a stockbroker. I was among the first five female stockbrokers in the world, and I
Mhm.
worked at Drexel Burnham. And I went to a club one night, this club that we belonged to called Le Club. It was a private club.
Mhm.
And Donald walked in, and I said to the maitre d', who is that? And he said, oh, he's a new member. His name is Donald Trump. I said, I want to meet him. He said, I don't even know him. He just is the first time he's ever been in the club. So about a
And you
week
you
later,
wanted to meet him? Why? Because he had
I
an
thought he
air
was
about him?
handsome. I thought he was handsome and cool and sort of my type, blonde, tall blondes.
Mhm.
So I wanted to meet him. And then they came in again another week, and I asked him again. I said, is there any way that I could meet Donald Trump? And he said, no, I really don't know him well enough. And about 3 weeks later, Roy Cohn gave a dinner party at 21, and I either sat next to Donald or one seat away. And by the end of that, we were best friends. So I was friendly with Donald from day one.
Wow.
And when I had my when I and he didn't like press at all in those days. Can you imagine that things that changed? But then when he
No.
started to build some tower, I did the groundbreaking, I did the topping off, I did the opening party. I even did. I mean, I've spent a tremendous amount of time on that project with Donald.
Are you still
And
friendly?
when he met Ivana, the first night he met her, we doubled, and she became my best friend. So I
Oh,
was always there. I was there during the Mar-a-Lago days. I was there during the Atlantic City days. So I was,
mhm.
I mean, it's a lifelong friendship.
And you're still friendly now, I take it.
I'm still friendly now. In fact, I was just in his company. They did a fundraiser right before the election. Oh, I went to Madison Square Garden for that
Oh.
big rally that they did there.
Oh, right,
And
right, right. Yeah.
so that was quite fun. So yeah, no, I mean, and I'm planning on interviewing him again because I'm going to do a podcast now, the Nikki Haskell Show Revisited.
I know. I can't wait. That would be amazing.
Yeah,
You can
I shall.
revisit all your old people that you met way back when, decades before.
Well, I was going to do a show. We did a pilot for it called Flashback to the Future, where I interviewed all the old people that I re-interviewed, but the person that produced it never got it together. But
Oh,
I will do a lot of that.
well, I
There's a
think
lot
that
of
sounds,
work.
I think that sounds amazing.
Yeah, so that was sort of fun. But
Yeah,
I mean, fortunately, most of the people that I've interviewed with, I'm friendly with.
right,
So like Joan Collins, unfortunately, a lot of them have passed away. Clive Davis is fabulous. I mean, I spent half my life with Clive,
right.
so
I
I'm
I just interviewed Cindy Adams when I was in New York
lovely.
last. And yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like you guys would be friends. She is she has been through everything. She tells great stories, but she tells a story about how she was with Donald and Roy Cohn. I wonder if it was the same time you were, where Roy was like, he's gonna run the world one day. And she remembers that.
When I used to call the house to speak to Ivana, Ivana was not a phone person. So Donald would answer the phone in the morning and I would talk with him and he'd say, enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think about me? But during the conversation, many times he mentioned that he wanted to be president. And Ivana even became an American citizen because Donald wanted to run for president.
Oh
And
wow.
this was 1981.
Yeah.
So it was
Wow.
always in the back of his mind.
Amazing. All right, so I want to get to your past because there's so much to catch up on. But I do really quickly because people, you are kind of everywhere online, on social media. But you've been an innovator in so many fields, and we will talk about it in a second. But what do you credit as your staying power for this long, keeping people's interest, knowing how to connect with people? Is there something that you would say is the one thing that you know how to do really well?
I'm a people person,
Mhm.
you know, and everybody knows that Nikki knows everybody. But it started when I was very young, because when I was a stockbroker, I knew everyone. Then I had my television show and I met a whole new, but I've always known a lot of people and I've always put people together. I've done great jobs with, not necessarily fixing people up, but putting people into business deals,
Right.
putting people into different situations, introducing people to each other. You know, if you're a people person, to me, you're a people person. Your family were people persons, and that's your upbringing. That's what you
Yeah.
do. You. Some people meet people and they don't want anybody to even talk to them. They keep them to themselves. I introduce everybody to everybody, and it's my great pleasure, and I love it. And when I had the show, it worked out so well because the show was what kept the show going was I used to give a party every Friday night, and the clubs would pay for the party, and I would give a party for a movie premiere, a birthday party, a book review. So every Friday night there was a huge guest list of celebrities that came through
Mm.
the clubs that I gave, and that's how the show stayed on the air all
Wow.
those years. So I met so many people. I was giving 6 parties a month, and it was wild. It was wild, and
Unbelievable.
it was great fun. Don't forget, those days there was no such thing as emails. We had to make the invitations. I mean, I used to have to go 3 o'clock in the morning to the post office on 42nd Street to pay the guy off to please put my mail on. So the people would. I mean, it was a challenge. And I had the DuPont, Richard and Robert DuPont worked for me, and Cornelia Guest worked for me. And somehow we got all the shows on the air. It was a miracle.
So explain to people though how you got into this. Like as a child, as a little Nikki. Well, first of all, do you have any siblings? Give us a background on your life. Who were you raised by? Where were you raised?
I was born in Chicago.
Mhm.
I was a champion horseback rider. I held every championship in the Midwest in 3 gated and 5 gated open stake riding.
Wow.
Then when I was 13, and I was also under scholarship to the Chicago Art Institute. And then we moved to New York, and we moved from LA we were from Chicago to LA in 1954. And the day I started the 8th grade, my father died. So I was brought up by my mother, who was the coolest person of all times.
Mm.
And even in spite of the fact that my father died when I was very young, I had a great mother and a great time. And I have a younger brother who's 6 years younger than I am, who lives in Aspen and has 3 children. And but basically, and I have a cousin that lives in New York, Margot Levy, who's not only my cousin but my attorney and my closest friend. And I have a very small family. But so when I got out of high school, I was just going to grow up, get married, live happily ever after.
Right.
My mother, the work word was never used in my house. So I was married and divorced twice to the same person. And the first
Wait,
time I was,
wait, why? Were you madly in love or you hated him?
I don't know. I don't know. I was very young. I was like 19 years old. But when I got divorced, the first time I took $18,000 and ran it into $2 million in the market, like a fluke. It was like, I had no idea what I was doing.
Oh,
So
wow.
when I remarried my ex-husband, he said, why don't you get a job? I went, job? Why would I want to get a job? So I thought, oh, maybe I'll be a stockbroker. It never entered my mind that there weren't any women that were stockbrokers. A friend of mine from Miami, his father owned a brokerage for Ronnie Rothstein. And I
Mhm.
went to his father and I told him how much money I made in the market and how I made the money and how I did that. I said, I want to be a stockbroker. So they sent me to the New York Institute of Finance.
Mhm.
Then I got divorced. So I went from living on Park Avenue with round the clock car and drivers then I went to making $75 a week as a trainee. And I did that for 6 months and I had a fabulous career. I did that for 10 years.